The governor has made it his task to ensure that we try and resolve these two issues. And
Right.
the electricity issue is one that he saddled with me with. As
Right.
you know, electricity is an area that falls under concurrent legislation of both the federal and the state government, with the federal government having taken the lead and being in the driver's seat on the development of the sector over the past 60 years. Lagos is stepping forward now under the bold direction of Mr. Governor of Lagos, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and has tasked me with working with both the federal government and the discos to improve electricity supply for Lagosians. It's the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. So we've got a number of things that we look at. We're looking at the electricity sector. We're looking at the mineral resources sector. We're also looking at the oil and gas part of it in totality. So under the on electricity, we're working with the discos to ensure that we identify the bottlenecks and jointly solve those problems together, and also advocate for them when they need to with the federal government agencies to ensure that they're supporting the requirements of Lagos State. On the oil and gas side, we're monitoring and ensuring that the safety of the downstream sector continuously improves. We're also looking at the upstream sector to learn lessons from what's happening in the Niger Delta and ensure that as we exploit resources, the Lagosians who are involved are carried along, and that we don't have a breakdown of law and order or even have any restiveness of any sort.
Wonderful.
To do this, we've been engaging with the localities involved, with the host communities, to ensure that they're carried along, and if there's anything significant happening there, they will be major beneficiaries of it.
Beautiful.
On the mineral resources side, again, the federal government has taken a lead on this. Mineral resources and solid minerals are the primary responsibility of the government, but we're ensuring that the exploitation does not happen to the and does not cost Lagos.
Okay. All right. So that's where we are at the point right now.
That's an interesting question, and a question that I'm trying to find the answer to myself. Now, there are different ways of finding the answer to that question, but the surefire way, the gold standard, is to ensure adequate supply, meaning only when everybody that needs electricity is able to switch on their electrical appliances will we know what the true demand is. What we can do right now is to calculate how much the offtake is and then make an estimate of what the suppressed demand is, i.e., if I supply electricity to you and you're not sure that the electricity will come, you will not have all your devices on the system. Either that, or you will not have enough devices because you know you don't have the energy to run them. So we will only be able to tell what the demand is in
by
Lagos
the time you're able to provide all this, right?
If we're able to provide. So there are many estimates that have been put forward. From today, the supply we get is about 900 megawatts on average between the two discos that serve Lagos. And some estimates have gone as high as to say that our demand is 6 gigawatts, i.e. 6,000 megawatts from where we are right now at 900 megawatts. Others have said our demand is no more than 1,500 megawatts. But needless to say, we are simply not getting enough supply in Lagos today as it stands.
So where are we now in terms of meeting up with that demand with Lagosians? Where are we?
So in our discussions with the discos, we've talked about electrification. In our discussions with the transmission company, we've talked about improving supply. Yesterday at the government house, Mr. Governor facilitated the execution of an MOU between the MDPSC and Eko Disco. What this will do is to bring about 400 megawatts into Lagos through NDPHC. They will be building transmission lines from some of their stranded power plants that will then be able to supply power to Lagos. Interestingly, if you want to know, NDPHC, at the last discussion that I had with them, claims that they have 2,000 megawatts of power that they're unable to evacuate due to transmission bottlenecks and due to inability of the discos to take them.
So MDPSC would mean?
The Niger Delta Power Holding Company. It's a company that's owned by the Federation, the three arms of the Federation, the federal government, the state government, as well as the local government.
All right. So they have plans to inject some kind of energy into Lagos? Is that the agreement?
That is correct, yes. And we expect to see them also further come and have discussions with the Ikeja Disco, and we're happy to facilitate those as well, because as you know, the companies that distribute electricity in Lagos are private sector companies, and all we can do is encourage them and work with them and give them incentives to supply power to Lagosians. So let's first of all talk about why. Why do we need a revised electricity policy in Lagos? Well, you know, someone said if you keep doing the same things, you shouldn't expect to have different results. So far, the electricity sector has been managed with Lagos taking different levels of approaches or interest in it. You'll recall that about 20 years ago, Lagos State started to support the power sector by supporting the development of the so-called at that time Enron barges to inject additional power in Lagos. That didn't go so well because the power that we were expecting to stay in Lagos did not stay in Lagos.
All right.
Further down the line, the Lagos State then incentivized the development of 5 IPPs that would supply power to Lagos infrastructures, Lagos State-owned infrastructures. This we thought would happen because we wouldn't be interfering with the grid at that time, and that happened to varying degrees of success. In fact, it was very successful.
All right.
The facilities being served by the IPPs have a lot of good stories to tell. Sometime last year, we then looked at the sector again to look at how we could further intervene, and we decided to upgrade power supply to the general hospitals. This again was at the behest of Mr. Governor.
Okay.
Nobody was to know that we would have a COVID event at that time when he decided to do this. So when COVID hit us, the hospitals, having improved their power supply from 6 to 9 hours on the average to about 18 to 22 hours on the average, were well prepared to take on the pandemic. So we're looking at expanding that now. Now, if we've been able to be successful at that, we think the state government has a lot more to offer.
Right.
Let's look at the constitutional or the legal basis for coming up with a policy that then allows Lagos State to do a lot more. If you look at on the concurrent list of the Constitution, it states very clearly that the National Assembly may make laws pertaining to generation and transmission. And on Section 14, it says that the State Assembly may make laws pertaining to electricity generation, transmission, and distribution. It was clear that the people who wrote the Constitution intended that the states would make laws relating to distribution. Okay. And so we're looking at taking that on board and seriously looking at improving supply of electricity in Lagos by being able to directly incentivize the discos to ensure that they electrify and bring power to Lagosians. We hope that we can do this successfully. With the support of Lagosians, we have no doubt that we'll be able to.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about the metering, because for people to really have the kind of electricity supply or the power supply that they need, meters must be involved. And I do understand the government has a robust policy really on metering. What does the policy look like?
So in terms of intervention on the metering side, let me first of all try and explain what metering is. Now, when you go to the supermarket and you shop, at the end of the day, all of the goods that you buy have price tags on them, and then when you take it to the cash register, they scan them. Right. The price shows and you see it, and then you have an exchange of money, and that's where the transaction takes place. On the electricity side, the cash register is what the meter is, meaning when you consume electricity, the meter counts how much electricity you've utilized, just like you would do at a pump station. Right. And at the end of the day, you understand how much you've consumed and how much you owe. Now, when you don't have a meter, what happens is there's an estimated bill that is sent to you by the electricity companies, and you may or may not agree with that estimated bill because it could be overestimated, it could also be underestimated. You wouldn't hear from anybody who gets an underestimated bill, meaning you're paying less than you believe that you should be paying. But you will hear a lot of noise from people who think they've been billed more than they should be paying, and I get letters like that every day in my office from people complaining about heavy-handed services from the distribution companies and threats to disconnect them. We've had engagements with the distribution companies, and we're trying to solve that now. We believe that transparency and accountability will happen when we start to have meters. So Mr. Sanwo-Olu, the governor of Lagos State, has very graciously decided to inject meters. So we have bought 20,000 meters just as a pilot project to improve electricity supply in some areas. Now, when you have meters, the electricity distribution companies incentivized to provide energy to you because they will then be able to get their money back. You, on the other hand, when you have a meter, you will be happy to pay your electricity bills when you get them because you know that you're being served right, and then you don't feel like you're being shortchanged.
And are these meters, are they free?
So the intention is to make it as easy as possible for everyone to acquire them. So when the meters are delivered to you, you will not have to pay for them. But you would then have to pay for the electricity that you consume through the meters going down the line. So that way, the investments that are made in the sector are being recovered by the sector itself.
All right. So this intervention that government is bringing on board, is it location specific? Are we thinking of places like where now? Are these interventions going to be put in place for this metering?
What we've done is we've identified some areas in Lagos where we can use as a pilot. We certainly didn't go for the easiest areas because we figured if we used easiest areas as a pilot, then it would be difficult for us to replicate them. We looked at areas where there were a lot of consumers. We looked at areas that were representative of majority of Lagosians. So we've identified a number of them. We're looking at Isaleko, we're looking at Mushin, we're looking at areas in Alimosho. We're certainly not looking at metering everybody, because the meter gap right now, at least not with the pilot, the meter in Lagos, gap in Lagos right now is about 1 million.
It's huge.
So what we're thinking is if we can find a small area that will then act as a lighthouse, such that everybody who sees that the power supply is improved in that area will then understand that bringing meters into their areas will then help them to 1 million. The pilot areas are really just going to be covered by 20,000 meters. In addition, our discussions with Eko Disco, they have, working with the central bank, acquired an additional 80,000 meters that they will inject in this year.
Okay.
Once we demonstrate that this works, we would then be able to incentivize the production and the supply of the 1 million meters that we need for Lagosians. We expect that to happen over the next, if you will, and I don't want to play God here, within the next 5 years. If you look at all of the publications so far, the intention is not, now NERC has published prices for meters in Nigeria. However, the intention of the metering program is not to sell the meters to Lagosians and collect cash from you. The intention is to install the meters such that you're able to get electricity supply, and then you can then pay for the electricity that's being consumed.
Okay, so that shouldn't be so much of a problem. Once they get the meters, then the electricity they get will suffice. Let's answer Moses from K2. He's worried that the present metering by Ikeja Electric is not free, and is asking why is it so. You want to give me a response?
Oh, certainly. In my office every day, I receive letters from people who are not happy at the way that their relationship with their distribution companies are going. And when we get these letters, we meet with the distribution companies to understand what the issues are, and in the most cases we resolve what those issues are. So if you have a concern with the disco, write to my office, let us call you back, let us bring Ikeja Disco to the table, and then let us resolve the problems. All right, Light Up Lagos means a lot of things to a lot of people, so let me correct, or let me try and clarify now.
Okay.
Light Up Lagos simply means this: light up Lagos. So if you go to your house and you switch on the light comes on.
Okay.
If you go outside in public spaces at night, the street lights are on. If you go to government offices and government agencies, it's fully electrified. That's what Light Up Lagos is. When you fly into Lagos at night, when we have achieved the aims of Light Up Lagos, you will feel as if you're flying into any other major city around the world, because the place will be lit.
Right.
That's what Light Up Lagos is.
So what happened to the street lights? Somebody was asking that question this morning before you came, that it appears these days the street lights do not come on at night.
All right, so we have recently, right, signed contracts to rehabilitate and retrofit all of the streetlights in 1,210 kilometers where they're covered in Lagos. So by the end of October, all of those streetlights will have been upgraded such that you will then have white LED lights across Lagos. Now, what that does, two things. One, it's brighter. Two, it's also less expensive for us operationally. We expect to incur 65% savings by reducing the energy consumption of the streetlights. All the high-pressure sulfurs will be changed to LEDs, which again would make Lagos State look a lot better from a distance.
So you are showing my listener in Ikorodu now that anytime soon the roads will be lit at night once again?
Certainly.